Xbox 360 hidden gems. The eShop is closing. Prices are going to go through the roof. Guys, buy them now while you still can, while they're cheap. Operation Darkness for 175. Fatal Inertia. Zoids. Spectral Force. Tenchu. Ninja Blade. You need to buy these games right now before they become collectible. And you know how it goes. We've seen this happen before. Super Nintendo, NES, Saturn. These games become collectible. People get nostalgic for it, and the prices go through the roof. So, now's the time to buy these games before, obviously, the digital store closes and the people that were in their youth playing these games, growing up nostalgic. Your 8-year-olds that are very nostalgic for Operation Darkness. Those 10-year-olds that were really into war tech. They're gonna start having good income, and they can afford to pay a lot of money for these collectible 360 games. So buy them now before it's too late. That's my thumbnail clickbait. This video is for a little recap of stuff that I picked up recently at Largo PlayCon. That was yesterday. Minus like 7-8 hours. So about 24 hours plus 7 removed from buying, selling, trading at Largo PlayCon. It's a cool local convention for video game centric and things that are very similarly surrounding video game culture. One of those, typical local type conventions. And since year one, we've always had a Tampa Bay trade event take place in conjunction with PlayCon. So we're out there on our tables, free to set up, buy, sell, trade. Everybody was supposed to buy a PlayCon admission, and then they get to buy, sell, trade. And this is what I traded for. Everything here. I'll zoom in a second. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to approach this video. Pickups. A few other recent pickups I wanted to just touch on. Well, the only thing here at the warehouse was some cool PSMs. I want to talk about the merits of magazine collecting. Just cool, bang for your buck. My pickups, and then CRTs, as you can see. I'm into the CRTs now. So what I got at PlayCon, try to tell the story behind them. I guess we can start from the top here. We got a couple deals I did with Devin, my good buddy who runs UCF Video Games, does a lot of convention selling. He had an Elemental Gear Bolt, and I did like a 3-way trade at one point in time where one of our regulars, Jared Pearson, had a bunch of stuff. Part of what he had was a bunch of Dragon Ball Z PS3 games. He had the full set of everything DBZ PS3 minus like Raging Blast 1. It was like he had Raging Blast 2, Budokai compilation or whatever, Budokai collection, Dragon Balls, whatever. All the other 5, there was like 5 or 6 games total. And I took them all in just because Devin's sitting right next to me saying like, Dave, get those and then I'll trade for them. So it was one of those things where like I forget exactly what Jared got off of me to get all these Dragon Ball Z games. DBZ games with the Devin, and then I threw in some other anime con type crap, RPGs, $20-$30 realm of just popular titles that sell really well at conventions. Game I have not had too many times over the years, and I really like it now because it's the ooh, stepped on a Def Jam icon there. Um, it's the like older brother of this game here, Project Horned Owl. So this is a Tri-Ace is the developer that made these two games. They they're both very well made Rails shooters, light gun shooters, and um, I forget if this one has anime cutscenes in it or not, but this one does. Um, the character designer and art designer behind Ghost in the Shell did the artwork for this game, so the cutscenes are very high quality. The studio also that did the animation for the cutscenes in this, I think, is tied to a lot of good animes like Ghost in the Shell. Good kind of hidden gem rail shooter here, and then of course we got the not so hidden gem, very well known because of working designs, RPG elements incorporated with a great rail shooter here. So I finally have a copy of Elemental Gearbolt. I've got several Horned Owls, but nice to have a Elemental Gearbolt. 300 trade on it. It's fine considering I'm trading so many like good margin, kind of lower mid tier kind of titles. To be able to trade up for that, I don't care if it's 300 marked, you know. If I'm getting $25 out of RPG X, that's easy to acquire. So, did that move. Um, it's funny, shortly thereafter, I'm at my booth next to Devin, and one of our regulars named Luis came by. Like, he was about to leave, and he just had like a couple pieces. I don't even remember what the other pieces were, but this one just like stole my attention. It's a really crisp corner. When you see all the corners like not worn to hell on a big box Namco light gun game, like I guess this one's pretty nice too, huh? I thought this one was a little rougher around the edges, but like a typical condition could be pretty damn beat up in the corners of those big box Namco light gun games, PS1. But just looking fresh, man. Brings it up to my table, and I'm just like, I don't even want to check my phone to see what it's going for. It's just like, what's your number on it? He said 70. I was like, you willing to do trade? He said yes. So I'm like, okay, I'm in. So I don't know what I got myself into at 70 trade. Picked a couple things off my table, and we called it good. So in that moment, Devin flashed that by me. He's like, you want to trade for this, Dave? And I was like, yeah, I do. And gave him a bunch of $15 games, maybe like 70, like 5 games that were 15 each, and I traded for that. So there was like a hot 1 hour time span where I was going for, just so happened to get these light gun rail shooters on PS1, and those are probably some of my favorite pickups of the day. And then this was another one of those coincidences where an individual in our community named Robert had, I think the 2 games I got from him were, it doesn't really matter what the fuck, but I think it was No More Heroes and Lollipop. It was like 2 of these 3 games here. And I did a trade with him, and then later on in the day I got the 3rd one. So I got 3 of the 4 Suda51 games. I threw this up here just to feng shui it up, where these 3 were legitimately picked up from trade day at PlayCon. 2 of them came from the same guy. 1 of them came from somebody else. And then I threw this here because it was here at the warehouse, another Suda51 game. This is it. This is the complete set of Suda51 PS3 games in North America. So, pretty cool set there. And there's kind of correlation going with Suda51 likes all of his games remastered likes to try to get them out on a newer system. So, from an investment standpoint, when it comes to retro games, like, yeah, you're risking a little bit by putting putting your money into titles that are likely to come out on future releases. I don't know if Shadows of the Damned has been announced, but a very strong likelihood that a game like that would get a remaster onto PS5 or Switch. Chainsaw's coming out. This, of course, was a Wii game that already got ported to PS3. Killer is Dead, who knows, but I would not want to, bet the farm on Killer is Dead, considering that they could likely do a extended cut, extra content re-release, you know what I'm saying? So, cool to see them all together, though, on PS3. Good chunk of 360 games came from Steve O'Danler of Tampa. And I just like his prices on these titles that really haven't blown up yet, but they're kind of on the cusp. And a lot of these titles, a couple in particular, Orange Box and Minecraft, aren't uncommon games, but they're just very, very high demand games. So at 15 for a complete nice condition Minecraft, 25 Orange Box, nice condition, complete. It's like these are titles that I don't mind trading for and kind of just stashing aside, waiting for the game store value to start hitting like 40, $50 on these kinds of games. Much like how Melee for the longest time was a $15, $20 game. Then it becomes something that a game store runs out of and they just desperately need those games in. So those are examples of your shop stock 360 games that I think are a little bit undervalued right now. And then some of these other titles are more titles that I think are likely to get affected by this crazy 360 apocalypse that we're experiencing right now. I haven't checked on Family Guy in a little while, but it's always just only a few copies on eBay are keeping it from being a $100 game. So when they're priced at like numbers that I feel are pretty fair for the past couple years kind of thing. 6 months ago, these prices weren't unreasonable at all. $20 on the Saboteur. 50 is what we called Family Guy. Like, I will happily trade to get my hands on those, and if they get really hot on eBay, I can sell them on eBay, is my thinking. I guess I don't need to bore you with the stories behind these games. Maybe it's just the reason why I picked up some of these games. These two Genesis games I got for a slight discount, marked at $60 each, but it was at the end of the day, and Megan was willing to cut a little deal for me. So, very hard to find cardboard exclusive. You can't get a clamshell version of Kawasaki Superbike. One of those weird ones that for a Genesis full setter, you're likely to have that game still on your list when you get very close to full set. Just very, very uncommon. Doesn't really cost a ton of money for how rare it is. So it's one where if you're trying to check off $100 games off the list, you're more likely to go for your Taito, your Renovation, Capcom, Konami, and then just kind of continue procrastinating on the Kawasaki Superbike game. And it's always very scarce on eBay, and nice condition copies can go for quite a bit. So for the price, that was a pretty decent flip. I'll probably just list it on eBay and try to sell it for $100 or so. Maybe replace the inner tray. That's the other thing about cardboard box games, is you really just got to look at the slip sleeve. For all intents and purposes, it's the slip cardboard, because that inner tray is pretty generic. You can just source that from a much cheaper title and kind of improve that middle piece there. So when I see a lot of wear on it, I'm kind of looking at like, well, how much of that wear is just the inner tray, and how much of it is really on the box itself for this rare game. And I thought this one was pretty damn good, and the inserts are all really nice. Um, Other than that, kind of just a value buy on Extermination. Kind of like we're talking about Suda 51, another one of those niche Japanese developers that kind of has a cult fan base. People that follow him on Twitter and like the stuff he produces is Swery65. One of his first games that he directed was Extermination. Very well known for Deadly Premonition. But Extermination, it's funny, on Extermination, the main antagonist of the game Deadly Premonition is also a character in Extermination. It's kind of one of those nerdy niche facts there for you. Extermination. The other PS2 game that Swery65 directed was called Spy Fiction. So if you're into collecting by director, I would recommend Extermination, Spy Fiction. The rest, I don't really have a good story behind the rest. Just good stuff, good bang for the buck. You know, I was here late at night at the warehouse after we dropped off the CRTs at the warehouse. I needed help with that. A few friends of mine loaded them into their vehicles. We all came over here, hung out for a little bit, and then that gave us extra time to do some trades. So one of the people there was Evan, who had long box Resident Evil. He also had some other knickknacks that had some value. And he wants all my broken Game Boy stuff, but it's like, this stuff isn't cheap just because it's broken or because it's gnarly looking but it's working. It commands a decent value. That's what I'm finding online, you know, when it comes to having a box full of what just looks like a bunch of shit, you know. This all must just be the big old broken pile. It's like, no, man, let's start testing it. Turns out most of it works. Just stuff I've had for years, so dig this stuff out of the warehouse, and it's not like I'm gonna be super cheap on it, you know. So it's a little disadvantage I have here at the warehouse, where people kind of go digging, they find themselves something that just looks like a pile of trash, but it's like, no, it's a box of treasure. Bunch of DS systems in there. I don't know if they work or not, you know. So had to take some time figuring out how we're gonna value these systems that he's gonna refurbish. But once we came up with the value, I slung a lot of gnarly looking systems at him and got some nice pieces. These four right here. The long box Resident Evil being one that, of course, is kind of the anchor of the deal that we did. I like this a lot too. This came from Evan. It's a package here full of, I don't really want to pull them all out. I'll pull out a few. It's a bunch of Nintendo Power posters. A few others are just like random pages and inserts. But, you know, the very often removed from a Nintendo Power is the poster itself. So you always hate when you get a bunch of Nintendo Powers, you find out that all of them are missing their posters. You know, that loses a lot of value. But how about somebody that just has a bunch of not Nintendo Power magazines, but just the posters themselves that have been removed? Like, what do you value those at? And I'll tell you, we valued them at, it was like 30 total posters and a few extra little knickknacks in this baggie. And we called them, all of them 60 trade. So $3 basically per poster trade, and that equated to like a gnarly looking GBA Model 1 working, missing battery cover, you know, ugly working GBA, and I got all these Nintendo Power posters. So kind of an oddball trade there. I'm very happy with it. I would like to maybe try to source some frames that are just perfect for this, you know? Get some cheap frames that would just fit this perfectly in it and be able to frame these and sell them for 10 a pop or something like that. I think that'd be very reasonable. Get them all presentable, ready to be in display form for a buyer, and be able to milk some money out of the Nintendo Power posters. $30 on an FF7. It's marked at 40, but we did 30. Nice complete black label. I'm not gonna pass on that at the event. Traded for MSR. Traded for South Park. Not much of a story there. This is cool. Also came from Evan, so part of this deal with the posters and Resident Evil long box. But Super Mario had a comic book series that would display in Nintendo Power issues. So each issue for several years would have a like 3-4 pages of it would be the Super Mario comic book. And then they came out with a book that was like a compilation of all of the comics. So this thing, I remember having one like 10 years ago and selling it for like $50-$60 at my store. And it was in nicer condition, a little nicer than this. But to think like 10 years ago, if I was able to get $50-$60, then if you only wanted 30 for it, it's like throw it in the trade pile. I want that for 30 trade. But I came to learn from him when we were talking about this that there's also a Zelda book just like this, Nintendo issued, like compilation of the Zelda comics, and that one's a little bit either harder to find or it's simply more desirable. It's worth more than this. So a couple cool things to look out for from a Nintendo printed media collector standpoint, I guess, if you're into Nintendo Powers or just nice display, nice printed media type stuff for your video game collection. The Super Mario comic books and the Zelda, they both have a nice compilation book that you can pick up. Pretty hard to find. They've always been pretty valuable. I remember years and years ago, this was a pretty sought after, pretty valuable book. The last thing I'm going to end on is the light guns and the CRTs. So, had an individual join the trade group on Facebook, and he posted some consoles for sale, and the prices were pretty high. He was saying they're all really nice condition, been cleaned out, like opened up, cleaned out, all that stuff. But some people gave him some hate for his prices, telling him that, you know, even your worst game stores will sell consoles cheaper than this. And the guy ended up contacting me on Facebook Messenger, saying like, "Hey, I hope I'm still okay to come out. You know, it's just my friend wants 120 for a Dreamcast because it's really nice." And I was like, "Man, just come out. Price it however you want to price it. If it's nice, you know, some people are picky and they'll pay up for nice." And so I was kind back to him, and he noticed that I had posted in the group that I was looking for CRTs, and he said that he's got a couple of these JVC D series CRTs, and asked if I was interested. I said, yeah, definitely. Said they're like 32 inches, they're big, they're heavy, and he could sell one for $50. I said, yes, I like that. And he said he was like, maybe he had a second one. He ended up saying, yes, I got a second one. And like 2-3 days before the event, he's like, I got 2 more of them. And I said, yes. And then he said, I got another thing. I got this RCA, whatever the hell this is, probably a 30-incher. I just kept saying yes, and then not really thinking about how the day would be. So then at the event, suddenly I have to pay him $220 for 4 of these JVC D series CRTs, and then the RCA, and I had to somehow get them back to the warehouse. So I ended up needing some help on that, but very happy with that. That was probably my favorite pickup. Were the high end, quote unquote high end CRTs. I could talk about CRTs for a little bit as I wrap up this video. But the last thing that I bought from him and his buddy were the Pelican Dreamcast light guns. Did 30 a piece on them, and he also had this kit where he's got 3 replacement triggers that supposedly makes these triggers a little better. So maybe I can install them for that price. He was asking 40 a piece. At 30 a piece, it's like absolutely big fan of that genre. Very niche, I feel, but it's one of those things that's always a kind of a mainstay in collecting. Is you'll always find that person that's a fanatic for the rails shooters. So there I was with my theme of getting the light gun rail shooters at PlayCon yesterday. Can never have enough of the actual hardware that goes for them. So these TVs, the thing that you need to know is that I feel like it's probably been within the past year or two phenomenon that's occurred with the CRT market. I would say previously non-existent, very niche, Go back maybe 5 years ago, and yeah, maybe you could find yourself a CRT that some CRT fanatic would pay $500 for, but that'd be called the Sony Wega, widescreen with HDMI input. It'd have to be something exotic, and that would carry a large price tag. But other than that, it's just like, is it a PVM? Is it a BVM? Or is it a Sony Wega? Is it widescreen, HDMI input? Outside of that, like, it was what you would expect. Like, CRTs are just something to pay $20 for at the thrift store kind of thing, or get for free. They still kind of are. You know what I mean? I would say it's almost like how video game collecting was for hunting for games back in maybe like 2004, where it's like, yeah, you could score a monster Saturn lot or something like that. You could go on Craigslist or go on Facebook. Well, I know it's back then, it's different times, but if you're looking for these rare games, like, that was a good time to find somebody that didn't know what they had, right? But there was an established market, and that stuff was valuable. It was just that you had to kind of know that what you had was valuable. Right now, CRTs are kind of like this, where they really are valuable. They are in demand, and I'll tell you what people are looking for. But a lot of people still look at them like, that's a piece of shit. That's a throwaway. So the more people throw these away too, the harder to find they become. But I feel like there'll always be enough of them to where it's like the undesirable ones can always be cheap. This one's kind of that mid-tier. I'll give you an example. I'll tell you the formula for a good CRT. This one's definitely mid-tier. A low-end CRT is going to be like this size. The bigger they get, kind of the less desirable they are, because they're just such lunkers. They're hard to move. Impossible to flip on like eBay, where you got to ship them. It's not impossible, but it's just like, what a bitch to have to ship these things. So the size becomes kind of a deterrent. But if you can, move them locally or create a local market for them, then large probably isn't a problem. Some people will definitely prefer a nice large CRT. I'm going to fire one up in a second, show you how cool they are. But, a large one, and then when your only video input is, what's it called? RF. You got your RF screw-in cable in the back. If that's your only source of input, that's not a TV that is going to remain relevant. years to come, people are going to be like, ah, fuck, I don't really want this TV. Composite is a big kind of requirement. It's a prerequisite to a valuable CRT. It's funny, the specs as far as the resolution and all that really doesn't come into play much, but there's kind of like a correlation between the higher end the inputs, the higher resolution and quality of the rest of the TV there is. So, a TV that doesn't even have composite inputs probably isn't a very pretty TV to begin with as far as fidelity goes. So, once you start talking though beyond composite and you have S video in, that's a nice little perk there. That's a little money perk. As soon as you get into the HD realm, where on the back you start to see component inputs. You see my component inputs here with the D series JVC. These are very sought after. And these are going to be later models, of course. I don't know when component video was first introduced to the market, probably like late 90s, early 2000s. But this TV is probably an 02, 03, or 04. And much more desirable, higher quality. And with that, higher quality video and inputs comes like, they're not going to skimp out on the speakers. It's going to have great audio too going on. So this is just more of a Cadillac of CRTs right here with the JVC-D series. To give you a price point on eBay, if you're buying these things online, you're not going to get this TV cheaper than $300 shipped to your house. Of course, half of that's like shipping, but that's why I jumped on these at $50 a piece. I am gonna stress myself out trying to figure out how to get them to the warehouse at $50 each. The component inputs a big plus. On the very, very high end of CRTs, of course, you can look into BVMs and PVMs. It's kind of just a different technology behind the resolution of the video picture itself. And a lot of times those PVMs, I would say all the time, they have all kinds of obscure inputs like BNC connectors you can use for video inputs. A lot of times fancy PVMs, I've got one right here. I've got a Trinitron PVM. Fuck, it's going to be hard to look at these inputs. But, yeah, I'm not going to be able to get to it. Here we go. But it's like back there, I don't think there is any component. This is like an older PVM. This is probably like late 90s. And it's going to have all these BNC. This is what I'm seeing. Tons of BNC connectors and weird shit. S-video. But like it doesn't have HDMI. It doesn't have component. So more of the commercial line, high-end CRTs will be at the very tip of the top of them is the Sony Wega, and I think JVC also did a widescreen CRT that has HDMI input, and that's kind of your goat of the CRT realm. And we're talking like a CRT that people will pay $1,000 for. So just throwing that out there to look out for these things. Somebody gave me a tip too, as we had all these TVs stacked up, ready to be transported out of PlayCon. This dude was like hitting his vape, hanging out. I think he worked for Unlimited Video Games, but he was outside on his phone. And when he saw me like starting to monkey with one of the TVs, he was like, "Man, nice JVC-D series you got there." I was like, "Yeah, I'm in the CRT Collective Facebook group." And I was like, "Shit, I'm in that group too." And he said, "Fuck, what did he say?" He said, I totally lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me. I'm going to turn this on, though. Oh, yeah. He said, the trick for finding deals on those, if you're looking out on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, he's like, don't call it a CRT. Like, the way you find the really good stuff is you type in stuff like tube TV or vintage TV or old TV. He's like, no, anybody with a really good deal, if you call it a CRT and it's a good TV, they're going to want retail. They're going to want hundreds of dollars. But that's the trick, is you got to call it something that some old nobody would think it's called. Tube TV, or old TV. I should have prepared this video a little better. Been ready for the... Aww. I'm going to pause it and see if I can come back. 1 second. Here we go. I got it. I got a remote for this TV. These are my Toshibas. That's cool. I got this Toshiba at a church sale. A church, what do you call it? Thrift meet or something. You know, everybody in the church community came together and put all their stuff out for sale. Paid $15 for this Toshiba. It's got the component in. Nice sexy size. Like, this is one of those like sexy ass reseller TV right here, because it's not too bad to ship and it's the size people want. Sexy, 2004 model. And then somebody in our community had its big brother, December 2004. You see that? Focus. December 2004. You see that above the barcode? And look at this. Oh, it's an 05. Focus. Fab 05. December 04. These guys were sitting in the same facility at the same time, ready for transport to Best Buy. And this is the Big Daddy. Exact same model, just a larger size. Sexy TV. Got the remote for it. And then I happened to, just last night, trade for a... Don't know what this thing is called, but it's a video cable that goes into a Model 2 or a Model 3 Genesis. Or I think that would fit, what, the CDX, Nomad probably. But it's a component video upscaler. I guess it's got some circuitry inside. It does more than just like straight wire it to component. It does some upscaling, some high technicals. And then boom, you get that rich guy video gamer display fidelity and audio right there. So for your guys that aren't poor, that are into video gaming and collecting, this is what they want right here. They want that Toshiba D series. Whatever the fuck series. What series is this? I gotta learn them. JVC D series. This is the AF series, the Air Force series. The Toshiba AF series. And the thing about Rolling Thunder 2 and Rolling Thunder 3 is they got some of the best hidden gem soundtracks. It's up there with Streets of Rage. Nice little OST playback video screen that they got going on, built into the game. I'll play a couple of the headliner songs here. Here we go. That soundtrack is nasty. Rolling Thunder 2, Rolling Thunder 3. And if you're into collecting Genesis, Rolling Thunder 3, exclusive to North America. No idea how that worked out, but it's made by Namco. It's got, I think, the same sound designer behind Rolling Thunder 2, did Rolling Thunder 3. Did not come out in Europe, did not come out in Japan. American exclusive, and a lot of copies I see are like X Rental. You find yourself a mint CIV Rolling Thunder 3 for Sega Genesis, pick that game up, pay up for it. That's a very, very classy collectible title right there. Rolling Thunder 2, though, not bad at all. A little more common. It's 2-player, while Rolling Thunder 3 is 1-player. So Rolling Thunder 2 has its perks, too. That's what I've got playing there. Fantastic soundtrack, though. It's up there with... When I first heard it, I was like, this is every bit as good as Streets of Rage. And Streets of Rage is the music behind that game that really got me to first love that game. So, CRTs, Rolling Thunder. I think that about does it. That was my PlayCon weekend.